Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Jet Report Suite of Solutions Excel Integrated Custom Reporting for NAV webinar. My name is Michael Introvertolo, and I'm the Accounts and Marketing Manager over here at Solution Systems. Today, we are very fortunate to have Anthony Bonaducci with us from Jet Reports, and he's going to be conducting this overview for us. But before we get started, I want to point out that I will be live tweeting. Whoops, get that done. I will be live tweeting key points from this webinar. You can find our Twitter account. It's at @solution_system. Also, we're not going to be taking questions at the end of this webinar, but as always, you can email them or call one of us. We'll provide you with all the contact information. So, with all that being said, I want to pass it on over to Anthony, and he can begin to tell us all about Jet Reports.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. All right, here I'm just going to start by showing my screen. Can you confirm you can see this mic for me real quick?
There it is. Perfect.
All right. Perfect. Well, yeah, again, my name is Anthony Bonaducci. I'm the West US Channel Manager here at Jet. Just a real quick note for you guys. Some of you may have worked with Alex Larson or heard of Alex. He's actually our East US Channel Manager, but he's currently on an airplane. So we figured rather than have that background noise, I'd step in and fill in for him today. So I'll have his contact info at the end in case you guys have any questions, since he's the correct representative for Solution Systems and any of their clients. But again, big thanks to Solution Systems for setting this up. We're excited to talk to you guys a little bit today about our suite of products and just kind of show you a little bit more about what they can do. Let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at what we have for an agenda. So just real briefly, kind of high level here, we're really going to cover three main things and maybe a fourth if we have some time. The first being Jet Express. So we'll look at what Jet Express is, explore the Jet Express Resource Center. Jet Express is our free reporting tool that comes with NAV 2009 and newer. So there's quite a bit of videos and tutorials and things like that on the website. Since it is free, obviously we don't want folks to take paid training on something like that. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on the Express piece just because, again, there's a lot on the website, but I'll show you where all that is. The next thing we're going to do is look at Jet Essentials, and that's our real-time reporting tool. You can basically think of Express as a kind of a sample of a little bit of the functionality from Essentials, but very similar in how they work. Both real-time reporting tools. So we'll talk about what Jet Essentials is. We'll also look at refreshing and creating some reports from scratch so you can kind of see the design functionality and the usability that goes into that tool. And then lastly, we'll go with Jet Enterprise, which is our full business intelligence and reporting tool. I think Enterprise is amazing what it can do. I think you guys will definitely take a lot from that piece as well. We'll cover what that is, how it works, what really drives that tool, because again, that's leveraging a data warehouse and cube environment versus querying NAV directly. We'll also look at how to create some reports, how to use existing report templates, things like that. And then lastly, if we do have a little bit of time left at the end, I'll take you guys through a sneak peek of our Jet Mobile product, which is something that we just released, developed off client feedback. It's phenomenal. It's essentially a way to take your enterprise dashboards and reports on the go via smartphones, tablets, web browser, and it's just more so a different front end for our enterprise tools. So again, if we have some time at the end, we'll go through that. So real quick before we dive in, just a little bit about us for those of you who may not be as familiar. We are the leading reporting solutions provider for the Dynamics suite. So, again, our tools, most of this foothold we have is developed from word of mouth, from partners talking about Jet. So, we have great products. They work very well. They integrate seamlessly with the Dynamics suite, which is obviously why most of you are here today. And so again, yeah, great products. We'll cover some of those today. We do have over 100,000 users worldwide across 98 different countries, so we're much more than just a U.S. presence. So again, that kind of speaks volumes to the growth we've had over the last few years. We are a Microsoft strategic partner, and in fact, our Jet Express tools were developed in conjunction and at the request of Microsoft. They basically saw how well Jet integrated with NAV, and some of the other solutions. Obviously, reporting is a bit of a bit of a difficulty in some of those systems, and so when they saw what Jet could do, it was, well, this makes perfect sense. They go hand in hand. They integrate well. We want these basic free versions that we can bundle with the tools, and so that's where Jet Express was born. And then lastly, it doesn't matter which one of the tools you're using or looking at, there is so many different resources available, whether it's our support team, our services team, the folks at Solution Systems. We also have a knowledge base online. We have our community site where folks post and answer questions. So there's so many different avenues for support with our tools, and it's something we're proud of. So the first thing I want to do today, again, is talk about JetExpress. So, again, I don't want to really demo JetExpress or get into too much of that piece because, again, you can certainly go to the website, and I'll show you that in a minute. But I do want to talk about what it is, what it's intended for, and then obviously, of course, it's important to kind of clarify what it's not because I think both sides of the spectrum are important there. So JetExpress is an Excel add-in, and it's intended for real-time reporting. So again, it's going directly against your NAV database, and then providing that information. Some of the things you might use it for, Excel integrated financial reporting, simple cell-by-cell design, ad hoc database queries, things like that, using our table builder tool. And then, the idea behind it is, a lot of power and a lot of usability with very minimal training. And again, all that stuff's going to be free and on the website. Like I said, it's important to kind of mention what it's not. So JetExpress is not intended for full operational reporting. It really is a kind of a snapshot of what Essentials can do and what Enterprise can do. It's not intended for BI or analytics. That would be the Enterprise tool. And then it doesn't have automation. So a lot of folks are looking for a tool where they can build something, schedule that to refresh and distribute, and that's stuff that again would be on the Essentials and Enterprise piece. So we'll cover that as well today. With JetExpress, basically the way it works, and with Jet reports in general, when you download Jet, it's going to bolt this ribbon directly into your workbook. Now, I'm going to simulate the JetExpress view. This is actually the full solution ribbon here, but just so I can show this really quick. With JetExpress, what you'd see is it's going to actually be more of a trimmed down version. So the only things that are really available to you with JetExpress, as you can see, some of the things are now grayed out, is the NL and GL functions, so basically financials and then kind of manual functions that you can create, and then the table builder. And the table builder, again, is just kind of one of the many tools that comes with Jet. It's just a visual interface to allow you to pull in some data, and I'll show you that here in a minute, or kind of show you some screenshots of what that looks like. But again, this is the ribbon you'd see with JetExpress. With Jet Essentials and Enterprise, we'd be back at that full ribbon here, and I'm just going to flip back to that before I forget. So I'll take off that simulation mode. So a little bit about kind of, JetExpress. I want to show you again where you can go to get some of this stuff if it's something you're interested in using. You can access this at jetexpress.jetreports.com. Again, free to Dynamics NAV 2009 through 2015, and you do need to be current on your VREP licensing for those versions. But let's take a look at the the actual resource center here. So I have a little hyperlink embedded there. And if I click on that, it'll open it up and basically say, are you looking for Express within Excel for reporting? We actually have Express for Word as well, which is document level customization, so things like invoices and things like that. And then we have it for GP as well. But today we'll take a look at NAV. And if I open this up, this is the JetExpress Resource Center. So this is where everything you need with Express lives. And again, jetexpress.jetreports.com. It'll have you select your region in case you're outside of the US, but select your region, it'll take you in here. And then essentially everything's here. So, you can check to see if you have the required software, so system requirements, things like that. You can download the links right here. There's how-to videos to get you guys up and running. And then we have tons of pre-built reports, which we'll take a look at in here just a second. And then also there's, the community site, things like that. So a little bit of what's going on here, the reports library. We have tons of canned pre-built reports that come out of the box. As you can see, if you want those, you just pop in your information and they'll send you a link to download all that stuff. What that looks like is you get this report player here, and I'll actually pull up the report player. So it's just a visual interface, but it's really nice. It's crammed full of reports, and you can actually add your own reports in here. You can scroll through and see, obviously at the bottom, my bar is barely moving. There's a ton of different things that we give you out of the box for immediate ROI. So you can hook up to these reports, modify your chart of accounts and use these reports directly. A lot of folks will spin off different versions of these reports and save new copies in here. You can also hit this flip icon in the bottom right. That will tell you a little bit more about the report, what the data source was when it was last created or ran. So things like that, just a nice visual interface. So I encourage you, if you are interested, definitely go check out those reports on the website. Again, there's a lot of value there that comes just right out of the box. A couple other things we have here, the online help section here. So if you open this up, this is kind of a, your how-to with Jet. one thing that's really key, and it's a very small print, I don't know why the link is so small, but if you click on this, you have a PDF that's just everything you need to know about Express. So I mean, this thing's got a ton of different pages in here. Looks like 21 different pages, so you can see all different kinds of information that our support teams put in here. You know, there's how-tos on some of the different tools and things like that. So, you know, again, this is very detailed. I encourage you to pop in and you know, if you do have Jet Express, just remember that's there. So yeah, there's the online help section, there's the community support. If you pop in here, we have our forums, so you know, where we post things about, you know, product releases and frequently asked questions. We also have an Ask the Community section, so a lot of different resources, like I said, available to you. We want to make sure you're able to use this stuff and be successful. And then obviously we have, you know, folks in our organization that can help you out as well. So, you know, come check this out. If you're interested in Express, you know, jetexpress.jetreports.com. Again, today I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but we can talk a little bit more about what it can do. So let me just close a couple of these tabs. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation again. So as I mentioned with Jet Express, there's really two main functions that you get out of the box. The first is the table builder. What the table builder does is, you know, it's a tool that we've basically designed that, you know, allows you to dive into Nav. It views all the tables and fields and anything custom you've added in. And it's basically a way that you can pull in sort of an organized data dump. So if you look at this kind of smaller visual here, you can see, you know, we have a list of customer numbers, names, salesperson codes, sales, profit, cost, open amount, etc. So we've pulled in a bunch of this information in just kind of a raw tabular format of data. And then what you're able to do is use Excel as the front end to summarize that data. And you can do a lot of different things, right? So you can create, you know, your visuals, you can have your data actually available to you. Slicers are available, so you can actually slice and dice this information, and I'll show what that looks like here in a bit on some of the essentials and enterprise reports. But that's basically the main tool that comes with Jet Express. And again, there's information on the website about this. The second tool is the general ledger function, and we won't dig into all this right now. I'll actually show you it in application so that it makes a little more sense. But the general ledger function, just think of it as synonymous with financials, so it's going to make your financial reporting a lot easier. It's one of my favorite functions that we actually have available because it's really easy to use, and what I mean by that is it basically walks you through how to use it, and again, that's going to make more sense when we jump in here in a bit. So again, don't want to spend a ton of time on Express. You know, visit the website if you want to see videos, things like that. I want to get into the stuff that we don't have as much content around on the website, which is the essentials and enterprise pieces. So here's a few little differences that you can see in the boxes of really the essentials and enterprise, what they bring to the table versus Express. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff. Drill down's a big piece, automation, you know, like I said, scheduling. The enterprise, really the back end is what drives that tool. So, you know, the fact that you're not going directly against Nav, there's a ton more benefits, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the first thing I want to get into today is Jet Essentials. So the first thing I want to point out, and we did this a little bit with Express, but is the Jet ribbon at the top of the workbook. And this is where you'll actually find all the necessary inputs, formulas, anything that's unique to Jet. So when you download Jet Reports, we'll get you an activation code. Once you do that, you'll have this ribbon that just bolts into your Excel. So you certainly don't have to, be on the Jet ribbon. You can use your other, Excel just as is. However, if you want to access anything to do with Jet, this is where you'll want to be. And really, this is the reason I give this presentation in Excel as opposed to something like, PowerPoint. I really want to drive home and just essentially reiterate throughout this that Jet is just Excel. So it may not look or feel like Excel, but if you think about it in its most basic format, it's just a few powerful functions we've added in here that allow you to dive into your NAV database, extract the information you want, and then again, report against it directly in Excel. So one of the great parts about Jet, we were created specifically for Dynamics, so there's a lot of really cool integration within that. We'll cover some of that today. One of the great pieces is that Jet automatically honors all the security associated with your database. It also recognizes any and all third-party add-ons you may have, so any custom tables or fields that you might have put in there. And while we were specifically created for Dynamics, we can connect to any database that's SQL, ODBC, or OLE compliant. So if you look up here on my Jet ribbon, you can see, I'm pointing to my NAV 2015 for today's demo, but there's all kinds of other data sources I could connect to as well. If you have any other data sources, again, that fit that mold of SQL, ODBC, or OLE compliant, we can connect to those as well and allow you to consolidate and report independently as well. The last thing I like to touch on just before we jump in here, so some of this makes sense, is kind of how we license the tool. So there's really two main users with Jet. There's designers and viewers. That pretty much is well described by their respective names, right? So the designers will choose which tables and fields go into a report. The viewers are simply individuals that need to be able to refresh an existing report. So, maybe going into a report, changing a date range, or looking at a different salesperson or whatever it is, and then again hitting that refresh button that you can see over here on the left-hand side, and updating all that data. So the other nice part about Jet, though, is if someone doesn't have the Jet ribbon installed, if they're not a licensed designer or a viewer, we understand the point of these tools is to get information and to disseminate that to the folks that need to see it. So any of these reports and things that I covered today, you can send this stuff to someone as a static Excel file. They don't have to have the Jet reporting functionality linked together. It's just wherever there was a Jet function, it'd be replaced by a value, but all that Excel functionality will remain intact. So the first thing I want to do today is actually jump in, show you what some of these reports look like, show you how to interact with them from the viewer standpoint, and then what I'll do is actually jump into a design portion where I'll show you how to build some of it. So I pulled up a couple reports directly out of our report player, so just sample reports here, and I'm just going to close that. And essentially these will give you a good idea of the role of the Jet Reports viewer, what exactly they have the rights to do here in Jet. So what I pulled up first is a consolidated profit and loss by company. This is just against the NAV Cronus database, so it is sample data. That's why there's some blanks and things like that. But basically, the idea of a Jet Reports viewer is, you look at this report and you think, okay, well, this looks great. It's the report I want to see. In this case, we have our two companies in the sample database, the North America company and the UK company. We also have their consolidated totals here. We've also broken them down further on the subsequent worksheets, and we've broken them down by global dimension 1, which is business group in this sample database. So you can see for each company now we have a separate tab. We also have all that data associated with the company. And again, here's the UK company as well. Now, as a viewer, I might look at this and say, okay, well, this is great. It's the format I want, but I want to update this report. I haven't refreshed it in a while, and I just want to look at my North America company. So I'm going to go to my Jet Reports ribbon. I'm going to refresh my report. And when you do that, it's going to bring up this list of report options, or basically filters. So one thing to point out here is that the designer of this report actually specified what filters are going to show up in here. So meaning he or she actually said, okay, I want my viewers to be able to toggle between dates, business groups, companies, and currencies. But as a viewer, you do have the rights to come in here and say, okay, well, let's click on this company filter, and it'll pull up the options directly from NAV. And let's just say, you know what, I just want to see my North America company. I want to run my report. And you're going to see it's going to go to NAV, query the database, and pull in that information. So now this exact same report that we just saw moments ago only shows our North America data. It's updated the data. We can see, again, I know it doesn't necessarily make sense in the consolidated context, but there's only two sample companies in here. And then you can see, for our North America company, we have that separate tab that actually has that information. Now, another nice part about Jet that really speaks to that seamless integration between NAV and Jet is the ability to actually drill down on a number. So if I'm looking at this sales retail number for EU here, and I go ahead and click on that, what that's going to do is it's going to actually open up NAV and show the information within NAV that makes up that number. So I can click this little drill down arrow here to the right. Otherwise, there's a little drill down arrow at the top. And as you can see here at the bottom, it's opening up NAV for me. And it should just pull up momentarily here in the role center and actually show me, all the information that makes that up. So we'll give that a moment. And just like that, here's all the invoices that have been posted that make up that number we were just looking at. So that seamless integration between Jet, between NAV, it's there. Here's an example. Again, the ability to drill back and forth is really key if you want that visibility into your data. Sometimes you'll look at a number and think, well, that looks inaccurate or skewed, or you want more visibility. Again, the drill down's a great way to get that visibility. And then the other nice part is it honors that security like we talked about. So, if I don't have access to, say, payroll, and I stumble upon a dashboard and I try and drill down, I'm not going to be able to access that part of NAV if I don't have that associated with my credentials. But once you are in here, you're in NAV, you've logged in essentially because it authenticated off of your Jet reports. So anything you have the rights or the privileges to do normally, you're in NAV normal. It's not like it's just a snapshot. It is actually a full functioning copy of NAV. So that's kind of the first report I want to show today and demonstrate a little bit about the viewer standpoint here. I've got one other sample report for Jet Essentials here that I've pulled up, and that's a top customer sales year-to-date report, just kind of a different look at some of the data and a different feel for the report. So with this report, we currently are looking at our top 5 customers, and we can see they encompass about 18% of our total sales for this sample company. One of the reasons I like showing this report is just to kind of display really the context you can put around dates as well. So in this report, we have 6 different time periods in one place. We have our month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date numbers. We also have the previous year's numbers, and then we have some variance calculations, which is just Excel functionality. And the idea is, as a viewer, I open up this report and I say, okay, well, this is great, but I want to get my my top 10 customers instead. I want to try and encompass a little more of this total sales percentage, see where that's coming from. So let's go to my Jet ribbon. Let's hit this refresh button again. And same thing, it's pulled up these report options, as you can see. So, this is what's specified by the designer. But I can come in here and say, okay, well, let's just change this to our top 10 customers. We'll keep it for the same date range. One thing just to note, I'll point out now, some of these dates are obviously in the future. We just updated our sample data here, and so to make it last a couple years, we set it out a few years in advance here. So some of those numbers look like we're doing like forecasting, but they're not. It's just the way the sample data is. So I'm going to run this report, and same thing, it's going to go to NAV, query it, and then dynamically update the report based on those filter criteria. So you can see now we have our top 10 customers. You can see they encompass 31% of our total sales, so we've done a better job actually grabbing more of that total sales number. And then the great part about being in Excel here is there's a lot of flexibility in what I want to do after this point. So what I mean by that is if I'm looking at this pie chart here, it's kind of difficult to discern, especially as you add more and more customers here. I can just click on this visual. I can come to the Insert tab here in Excel, and maybe I just change it to a column chart. Maybe that looks better. So easier to scroll over, certainly, and see that information. So, you get to couple all that Excel functionality with your reporting. And that's really a big benefit for Jet, and that's a benefit of having that Excel front end. Most individuals in the business world already have some familiarity with Excel. So, you're able to couple all that information. So that's kind of the second example. The other thing I like to show really quick from the viewer standpoint here is the Jet scheduler. So again, this is something that's utilized very heavily by our current end users here. And when you open up the Jet scheduler, what it's going to do is bring up this task window here. So they call them tasks. Really, it's just different reports that you want to run and distribute. So if I click on New Task here, maybe I want this top sales report to go out to my sales team every Monday morning so they can see where their numbers are from the previous week. So maybe I create a new task, and maybe I call this again top customer sales or whatever I want to call it. Schedule how frequently I want it to run. So maybe I want this sent out again every week, Monday morning for my sales team. So I say, okay, let's start this on Monday morning at 7:45 a.m. so it has some time to run and distribute. I can choose a list of email recipients, so I can just click Send Email, put in either my sales group or my individual salespeople in this example, and then lastly, just choose my output. So do I want a Jet workbook like you see in the background? Do I want a PDF? As just a static Excel file, whatever it is. And then I can just click Schedule and close this. And every Monday morning, this report's going to automatically run in the background. It's going to refresh based on the filter criteria we've specified, and it's going to send off to my entire sales team or whoever I specified on that email list. So, when you think about Jet reports from a real basic level, the idea behind it is that we're going to, build these reports once. We're going to format them, get them looking how we want, and then just use them indefinitely by refreshing and toggling between the different filter parameters. Well, now you can truly make this a hands-off approach by coupling the scheduler with all that. So you can make it so that you built it once, you schedule it to run indefinitely, and you never have to do anything with it again except look at the data. So again, that's the viewer standpoint for Jet Essentials. I do want to go ahead and take you guys through how to build a couple things. Let me just close out of these really quick. And I'm just going to open a blank new Excel file here. And I'll show you one of my personal favorite tools, that Jet offers. Obviously, in just a short, brief webinar like we have today, I don't have time to cover, everything that we may want to show and, all the different functionality. That's something that would be covered in training. But the one that I love to show and I think demos really well is the Jet browser here. So what the Jet browser does is when I click on the browser tool, it's going to automatically populate with every single table and field from your NAV database. This includes any custom tables or fields, anything at all. It's reading directly from there, so it's going to load with all that stuff. As you can see, NAV has hundreds of tables, thousands of fields. The average report writer really only uses 10 to 15 tables, maybe 100 fields. So one of the things we've done, it's not breakthrough technology, but it will make your life easier. We've added a little favorites button here, and that allows you to toggle to the tables used on a regular basis by just starring them, and then again you can just toggle with that favorites icon. So what I mean is if I came to this access control table, I put a star here, I star some of these fields. When I hit the favorites button, it'll take me directly in there, and then again I could obviously take that off if I wanted to. So for this example, I'm just going to build something out of our customer table since we have some good sample data in there. So I can just use the find as I type as I just did, or I can hit my favorites button since I've already started the table. And if I come over here on the right, you'll see all the different fields that are available to me from my NAV database. And what I'm going to do is just select some of the ones that I want to report on. So I'm going to grab my customer number, my customer name. Let's go ahead and get the state associated with the customer. Let's get the salesperson code on my end that's associated, and let's get the total sales amount. So I'm just building a basic sales report based on the sales to each customer by salesperson, and I'm going to grab this information, I'm going to drag it onto my worksheet, and I'm just going to drop it down. So believe it or not, I'm completely done writing this report from a JET standpoint. It's built all the connections between these fields, it's brought my information in, it's automatically formatted the report here in my design mode. A little bit of what you're seeing here up in this first row, this is kind of reserved for the JET speak, if you will. And what it means, if we have a hide in this first cell, when we refresh our report, it's going to make this column disappear, right? So, my users, they don't care about the formula, they just want to see the data. So when I refresh, that formula will go away. This fit means that it's going to automatically expand when we refresh. So for example, salesperson code was cut off a moment ago. When we refreshed, that would have expanded so we weren't cutting off the data. One of the other great things I can do here is I can add a little fit here to make my next column fit, and I can bundle in some Excel calculations. So that's another big thing, especially financials, things like that, right? If you want to bundle in Excel calculations, those will carry through your report. So maybe I want to get like a 10% of sales calculation, maybe that's a commission percentage or something like that. So I'll grab my first sales number here. I know it's blank, but we're working with, again, sample data here, so this will populate when we refresh. So I'll just use some relative and absolute cell referencing to multiply this stuff together. And now when I refresh my report, what you're going to see is that calculation is going to carry all the way through. So what I can do is I can actually go to my JET ribbon just to show you that I don't have to do anything else. I can refresh this report. It'll go to NAV, and where applicable, it's filled in all this data off of my sample data. So again, I know there's some blanks and I know there's some zeros and things like that because we're working with sample data, but you can see it's gone and given me about 170, 180 rows of data, and all I did was drag and drop that information and hit refresh. Now, obviously, there's a lot more we want to do here, so this isn't really a report, it's just kind of a data dump. So let's go back and let's clean this up a little bit. So I'll go back to my design ribbon. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and I'm going to do some formatting, add some filters, things like that. One of the things there is I just asked it to give me every customer number, every name, every state, every salesperson code, every sales amount, and then multiply that amount by 10%. And from this small sample database, that was maybe 170 rows of data. From your database, that same report might return, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of rows, depending on how many, sales and customers and things like that your organization has. So what I'm getting at is we need to put some filters on here too. We don't want all time, everything in NAV. Odds are, there's a reason we want to run this report. So we'll start off. Let's go ahead and kind of clean this up from a cosmetic standpoint. So I'm just going to use Excel functionality here, start to make this look a little bit more like a report. So maybe we bold our titles, add some color. Let's get some auto sums here. Put these in a currency format. And again, this is all just Excel. Let's go ahead and add some borders at the bottom. So maybe we do like our subtotal indicators. Let's take off our grid lines. I'm going to add some sort of a visual. So let's just grab maybe the customer name, and let's grab the sales associated. Let's insert a visual. So maybe we'll do like a column chart for this one. Set that down here at the bottom. And then I'm going to add some filters, like I said, because I don't want all this information. I want to kind of narrow the range we're looking at. So I'll click on my formula. I'm going to go to my Jet ribbon and just add these in manually. So I'm going to open up this formula with the NL function, which is your standard NL rows, so meaning return the data here in rows. And then I'm just going to basically come in here and come down to my filters section. And you'll see if I click the drop down, it's going to give me all the different fields within the table, because that's how you filter with a reporting tool. So it's read all those tables again, or I should say all those fields from the customer table. And I can either scroll through these, I can use the find as I type. So in this case, let's do one for state. And it will give you data direct from NAV. So you can click in here and see, okay, well, here's the states that we have in this sample database. It does have all your standard operators, so the OR operator, range operator, your less than, greater than, equal to, and we have the wildcard operator, which will return everything. So if you put that asterisk in there, it'll give you everything, every single state in this example. But in this case, I'm just going to hard code this in, and I'm just going to say, you know what, just give me Oregon and Washington entries, and we'll do one other filter. Let's do one for sales, and we'll say, you know what, again, I can use the data from here, but let's just say, you know what, and only give me sales greater than 15,000. So we'll throw that in. And now when I click OK, you're going to see this first record here is going to update. And that's because it didn't fit those filter criteria. So now if I go to my Jet ribbon, I refresh my report, you'll see that it's actually now narrowed this down greatly. I'm in Excel here, obviously, so I can make my visual bigger if I want to blow that up a little bit. But you can see we only have entries that are in Oregon and Washington, only sales greater than 15,000. And if you remember back to the start of this, all I did was grab those fields, drag them in, drop them on the worksheet, and just kind of clean things up. We added a couple filters on there, but you saw the simplicity behind that. It's just using those fields within the the little interface there. But I mean, that's the browser tool. I mean, this is a basic one table example. I'll show you how you can link another table real quick, just so that functionality is available as well. So if I wanted to add another table in here, again, we're only pulling from the customer table with this example. Let's go ahead and go to our design ribbon again, or design mode, I should say. So one of the things that's in the customer table here in NAV is the salesperson code, but it doesn't have the salesperson name. So that may not seem like a big deal, but if you have two salespeople whose names, or initials I should say, are MD, well then it kind of is a problem, right? You want to know, well, which person is which MD and which sales entries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a different table in NAV, and I'm going to get that salesperson name. So to start out, I'm just going to go ahead and insert a new column, and we'll put our little auto fit up here at the top. And I'm just going to add, another header here for salesperson name. All right, so we've added that in here, giving ourselves a little more room. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click in this cell in design mode here. I'm going to open up a new function. And one thing that's key is Jet is very intelligent in the sense that, it knows to connect this data once all is said and done here. So I can skip over the what here, because what the what says is, okay, how do you want to return this data? Do you want it in rows? Do you want it in columns? Just individual cells? We've already used a rows function here, which is why the data is going down the worksheet. So I'm just going to skip over that piece. And then it's going to say, okay, well, what table do you want to come pull this information from? So again, it's not in my customer table, but I do know that it's in my salesperson purchaser table. So I'm going to just start typing to find that table. All right, so there's my salesperson purchaser table. So I want to go to my salesperson purchaser table. Under the field here, I want to retrieve the name. So I did the find as I type again. And then what we do is we link it together by common fields in the tables using the filters. So to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say where the salesperson code is equal to, and I can just either use data, but what I like to do and make it really easy on myself since we're in Excel, it's just cell reference. So what I've said now is go to the salesperson purchaser table, retrieve the name field where the salesperson code to the left of it, as you can see here, is equal to, and then again I use that data right there. So if I click OK, you'll see it's going to pull in that first initial here and that first name. So we have Mary Dempsey. And now if I refresh my report, where applicable from the sample data, it's gone. It's retrieved the actual salesperson name from a second table. So that's a two-table report using the browser and using Jet Essentials. So we pulled from the customer table, the salesperson purchaser, and again, we're able to return all this information. We can scroll over our visual and see the actual, data entries here. Obviously, you can toggle between those different visuals as you saw previously. You could give this thing a header and things like that. But I mean, that's Jet Essentials. So the other tool I want to show real quick while we're on the Essentials topic is the general ledger function. So for you financial folks out there, that's going to be a something that you're going to use heavily. So I've kind of put together a template to show this. None of this is Jet reports. I just skipped over kind of the formatting and kind of visual piece to make these look nicer. I just typed all this stuff in manually, as you can see. That way we don't have to show you that again. So what I'm going to do is use our general ledger function to fill out this consolidated profit and loss statement for a set of accounts for 2 different companies in my sample data across, again, the futuristic year 2018 here. So if I go ahead and click in my first cell, I'm going to go to my Jet ribbon and I'm going to open up the general ledger function here. So it's just one of the functions on the left. And this should look familiar. This is that little interface that you saw in the presentation. Obviously, I didn't want to dive too deep then because we're going to go through it right now. But one of the reasons I love this tool I mentioned is the ease of use around it. And what that stems from is that it basically walks you through how to use this stuff. And what I mean by that is if I click on this what dropdown, it's going to say, okay, what do you want to retrieve? The balance, budgets, credits, or debits? Well, we're looking at the balance for these sets of accounts for 2 different companies. So I want to retrieve the balance. And then it's going to say, okay, great, for which accounts do you want the balance? So, again, I could come through here and I could select individual accounts or ranges or whatever it is that I want to see. Excuse me. But I'm just going to come over here on the left and use a cell reference since I put this template together. So I'm going to say, I want to get the balance for this 44,100 account. And then it will ask you, okay, what start date do you want the balance for? What end date? You can use the calendar here. Otherwise, I always recommend, doing these mock-ups, throwing the information on your worksheet to help you keep, on a track here. So I'm just going to cell reference my first start date. So I'm going to say, give it to me for this, again, for this year 2018 in January. And then same thing for the end date. We'll grab it right off our worksheet. Now, one thing to note, if you just give the start date, you're going to get beginning balance. If you just give the end date, you'll get the ending balance. If you give the the range here, or the 2 dates, I should say, you'll get the net change across that time period. So in this case, we're saying, give me the balance for these accounts across the year 2018. It does default to your global dimension 1 and 2. So in this case, it's business group code, customer group code. But if you had other, views or anything else, there's none in the sample database, but you could toggle between those as well. And then the last piece that's really relevant for our example here is just the company filter. So I could grab this again directly from NAV as it's reading, but I'm going to get it right off my worksheet. Okay, and we'll cell reference that. And now I'm just going to click OK. And as you can see, it's brought in the balance here for this retail sales North America account. And one of the weird things about NAV is that it does store sales data as negative numbers. If that bothers you like it does me, I usually just throw a quick negative sign in front of my formula so I can flip that around. And now the interesting part here, and really the benefit of doing the mock-up and being in Excel, is that with the general ledger function, it's meant to be calculated on a cell-by-cell basis, meaning you'd have to write it in this cell, and this cell, and this cell, and this cell, all the way down the worksheet. Well, the big benefit here is that I use cell referencing. As you can see, everything's pointing to where I pulled the data if I double-click. And I've used relative and absolute cell referencing to lock certain columns and rows. So I can actually just take this first cell here, and I can drag it over into my UK company, and it's going to calculate that balance now. Now, what I'll do is I'll come home here, and I'll just add an auto sum so I can get the total between those, so my consolidated total. And now I can actually take this entire row and just drag it down my worksheet. So because I took the time to do this quick mock-up to add some cell referencing, I'm able to copy and paste this and just drag it down my entire worksheet and actually fill this thing out by only writing the formula one time. So if I bring this down, you'll see we now have this consolidated profit and loss by company. And again, all I did was write a function one time. And if you look and I double click in a couple of these, you'll see, instead of pointing to my North America company for this balance, it's pointing to my UK, but we're still looking at the same set of accounts. We're looking at the same dates. So yeah, a really great way to exploit Excel. There's so many things you can do in here. But that's what I want to cover on the essentials piece. What I want to do now is kind of switch gears, look at Jet Enterprise, which is where I really get excited. I think there's just so much that Enterprise brings to the table. So real quick, just a little slide about that. Give myself a little room here. So Jet Enterprise, our full business intelligence and reporting tool, it comes with everything you've seen so far, but it gives you so much more. And to better lay a foundation for our BI model and kind of the rest of the presentation, we use this little visual right here. And I'll go ahead and zoom in just to make sure you guys can see this okay. So basically to explain our BI model, we use this graphic right here. And if you follow the graphic from left to right, you can think of the first box as your entire NAV database. So we have tons of data, complex formats of tables and fields. They each have specific relationships between them. As we talked about, NAV has hundreds of tables, thousands of fields. The average report writer is only getting their hands on maybe 15 tables, maybe 100 fields. So, there's a lot of data overkill. NAV's very thorough and great at what it does, but, you don't need to go to every single obscure table to get that information. There's usually summary tables or things like that. And so this is really why a data warehouse becomes important. So a data warehouse here is meant to store only the information that's relevant. So it takes this very large data set, as you can see, and it trims it down to something that's much more manageable. It goes a step further, and it actually organizes the data by subject matter. So if you notice there in that visual, the icons are lined up in rows, and this is just a visual representation that, all the data that's related to, say, sales is in the sales section of the data warehouse, and that's regardless of which, table it lives in NAV. So, you'd have your sales section, your finance, your inventory, whatever it is you want to look at. And again, we've optimized that. So we've made it so that you don't need to know the connections between tables and fields. So that's probably the single biggest ease of use benefit that Enterprise brings to the table. On that first example I showed in Essentials, where I linked together data from my customer table and my salesperson purchaser table, I had to know that that information lived there. I had to know that the salesperson name was actually in the salesperson purchaser table and not in the customer table. So for folks like myself actually who aren't incredibly familiar with NAV, where everything lives, Enterprise is amazing because again, we've already organized this. We actually give you a pre-built data warehouse and a set of pre-built cubes that come with the box, come out of the box, I should say. Another nice part here with the data warehouse is that it's organized for orderliness and consistency. So a good example here is, as you input sales orders, those oftentimes have missing fields, they weren't filled out all the way. Well, as you build your data warehouse, you can actually decide on default values to put into those empty fields. So it brings a sense of, uniformity or completion to your reporting. And then as we take a step to the right, we look at the cube, and the cube makes the data even more relevant for analysis. Excuse me. So the cube actually, essentially, this is where we bring in dimensionality, key performance indicators, things like that. That's where these come into play. If you notice on this picture now, as we look at the cube kind of representation, not only the icons lined up, but they're also organized by color. And this is just again, visual representation that the cube actually takes every possible combination of dimensions and values, and it just lays them out in a flat file format. So what this means is if you wanted to see, some long string of data, something like maybe sales by item, by region, by year, that analysis is actually just sitting here in your cube waiting to be viewed. So this is one of the reasons why analysis in this model and with a tool like Enterprise is going to be instantaneous. The other reason is just simply that the data set is so much smaller. The cube goes a step further and also pre-calculates formula-based values. A good example here is like something like gross profit, right? And you can also add in any custom KPIs. And the benefit here is that your organization is actually working from one version of the truth. And that's a funny concept, but what I mean by that is that everyone's using the same formula to calculate gross profit. It sounds funny, but especially in larger organizations, you go from department to department and you hear terms thrown around like gross profit, but you sit those people down in a room and you say, well, show me how each of you got to that number. And they all did their own calculations and put their own work into it, but the problem there is that a lot of times they ended up with completely different numbers, they went different routes. So rather than having your individual employees have to calculate all that stuff, let's just set it up once correctly in the cube, and then as long as someone's using the JET tool here, that they're getting accurate information and they're speaking the same language around that information. So essentially think of this entire kind of structure here behind JET Enterprise as going from a lot of data to only a little, from everything to relevant only, from complex to simple, and from slow to fast. So the three main benefits that this permits for you guys versus something like just a traditional reporting tool like Essentials or anything else out there are going to be consolidation and performance. So data warehouses are amazing at consolidating data. If you have data, that's in NAV and you have historical data in a SQL database and you have a CRM system or whatever it is that you guys work with, we can pull all that information into the data warehouse, set the link between that data one time, and then we've just given your users a completely optimized set of data that's as easy to use as possible. So you don't have to join those different databases from a reporting standpoint. We do that on the back end, and then we make it easy for your users who are typically living in the front end. The second benefit is speed. So as I mentioned, cubes are amazing. They pre-calculate everything. So all of your information that you want to see is sitting there waiting to be viewed on a scheduled basis. So, some folks have this every night. So you come in the morning, all your data is up to date. Other folks, what we do internally, we have everything refresh overnight. We have our sales cube refresh every hour instead. So, at the very latest, our sales data is an hour old. But again, you can get very granular if that's what you prefer. And then the last benefit is ease of use, everyone's favorite, right? It's night and day. Any tool out there, a BI tool like this, when you're going against the cubes and what Jet brings to the table, is just going to be far and away easier to use. We see all the time folks go from 3 or 4 designers with Essentials to 30 or 40 with Enterprise. It really is that dramatic. So what we give you guys out of the box, just to clarify, is, as I mentioned, is a pre-built data warehouse and 7 pre-built cubes, and you can actually see them right here. So there's a finance cube, purchasing, inventory, AP, AR, sales, and manufacturing. And these are going to hit about 80–85% of your reporting needs for NAV, right out of the box. That's something that other tools just can't say. The fact that NAV's kind of always been our bread and butter, we put these things together, and what we realize is that 80% of what your organization wants to see is the exact same as everyone else. So, the competition or the other tools out there, they build this stuff from scratch every time. They charge a ton of money for the consulting around it. And we just said, look, let's just give it out of the box, and then we'll tailor those cubes, spend a few hours and customize those to what you want to see specifically. So this will make more sense as we take a look at some of them. But really, that's Jet Enterprise. Our back-end tool, that's what drives BI, is what's on the back end. We have the best one out there. It's the Jet Data Manager. It's proprietary to Jet. It generates mountains of SQL coding with the push of a button, so it makes it so someone who's not a SQL or a BI expert can actually customize their project and add in new tables and fields and information from different places to the cubes in the data warehouse. So very, very easy to use, both on the front and back end. So what I want to do is just transition, show kind of what this stuff looks like from, from the enterprise viewer standpoint, if you will. So what we've done here, pulled up a couple sample reports, again, directly out of the report player. We have one for Express, as I showed you already. We have one for Essentials and Enterprise, but I grabbed a couple reports for example's sake. And what we've done is, this is more of the dashboard feel. So this is a big thing that's in demand right now. C-level executives love this stuff. They don't want to sift through a bunch of data. They want to see, are we trending up? Are we trending down? How are my salespeople doing? Things like that. And so what I've done is I've consolidated a bunch of visuals here, visual KPIs or key performance indicators, surrounded them with slicers so that we have a way to manipulate the data. Let me just grab my cube set before I forget. So I'm just going to change my data source to my cubes. And then what we do is we break down the data that actually goes into these visuals on the subsequent worksheets. Now, perhaps the nicest part, and that really, what drives the visibility is the pre-calculated cubes. So if I don't want to see 2016 Q2, if I want to get down to the daily daily entries here in, in April, I can actually just expand down on these plus signs. I don't need to refresh my report. I don't need to rewrite a report. I don't need to change filters, anything like that. The data is pre-calculated, and we're just reading directly from that. So you can see I can get all the way down to the daily entries. I can roll that back up if I want. My visual updates accordingly. So we have all the data that goes into those visuals, like I mentioned, on the subsequent worksheets. And then the idea is that unrivaled visibility that BI gives you. So you can actually come through here. You can slice and dice this data. So if I just want to see North America, just for my 4 West Coast salespeople, just see how they're selling these bags and totes. Specifically these sports bags, I can come through and slice this information, and it's all updating instantly because it's all pre-calculated. So you're not waiting for a separate refresh every time. If I just want to look at 2018, there's my 2018 data. And what it allows you to do is spot these trends in your data and make decisions to write, kind of the course of your business before it's too late. If I'm looking at this right here and I'm looking at, my West Coast salespeople, how they're selling this item that's in all of their, they all sell from that item portfolio. If I look down here, Annette's the only person selling this thing. If I look at my pie chart here for 2018, Annette was literally the entire thing. There was a few slivers, but that's a problem, right? I need to talk to my team, figure out if there's a lack of training, what's going on, why is she the only one selling this stuff? But maybe she started first, so maybe we check 2019. Same concept, right? She's still the only one here selling. So, that's a conversation that needs to happen. So that's what BI gives you. It gives you the visibility into your data that reporting just can't give. So that's one example. Another example is like this financial dashboards here. You've probably noticed I use a lot of sales data stuff today. It's not like Jet's better with sales. It's just the sample data that's driving this demo today has a lot of good stuff in sales. But here's some financials. Same thing. Dashboard with KPIs. We also have the information that goes into those visuals here on the subsequent worksheets. Like I mentioned, you can expand out any of those plus signs. Another example, another different field that a lot of people use Enterprise for is just reporting, but with the BI tool. So what I mean by that is this is a financial report workbook. So each of these tabs are independent. They don't, they're not connected in any way. So if you don't like the dashboard field, you don't have to use it that way. You can just come through here and again see all your independent financials. You saw that a lot of them have their own slicers. I can actually expand out, like I mentioned, on these plus signs. So if I want to get down to my, my assets and my liabilities at a granular level, there's this information. Another example is like this accounts receivable workbook. Again, if someone has a question in your organization and it's surrounding accounts receivable, this thing has 5, 6, 7 different AR reports at the bottom. So, you could probably just send them this thing and they're able to, answer their own question. Same concept, right? You can come through and say, I just want to see North America, just my 30-day bucket, just for, BART's customers, and there's that information. So that's Enterprise from the viewer standpoint. I want to just transition here. We're getting a little tight on time, so I want to show an example of how you can design something. Again, I don't need to keep using sales, but it's got good quality information in there. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to my Jet ribbon, and this is something that will become available to you once you go with Enterprise. It's the pivot table icon here, and when I open this up, I'm just going to say, let's open up a new pivot table, and it'll bring up a list of those pre-built cubes we talked about. So there should be 7 of them, as you can see there. And I'm just going to say, let's go ahead and grab from my nav cubes this sales cube. And when I open it up, it's going to automatically populate with every single table and field in that cube. And I think I got too many tabs open here. Let me close a couple of these. Got a lot going on here for GoToMeeting to deal with. Close a few of these out. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm going to open up a blank one. So I'll go to my cube, open this thing up, grab my sales cube, and you're going to see on the right, it's going to load with all the different measures and dimensions, and this is literally the pre-built cube. So, I mean, if you went with a, Jet Enterprise, within 2 hours, you're going to have these cubes installed, up and running on your server. And if you look over here on the right-hand side, you can see we have these measures being numerical values. So in the sales cube, it's things like cost, profit, sales amount, quantity, etc. Dimensions being the pieces that give them relevance or context. So things like who are we billing the sales to, what company's selling this stuff, our global dimensions, what items are we selling, and there's so many other fields that are rolled up in here too you can expand out on. Where are we selling them, when are we selling them, who's making these sales, who's the sell to customer. So again, tons of stuff. I mean, this is all in the pre-built cube. This is a ton out of the box. And if I come through here and I want to build something, I'm just checking boxes. I mean, it's just a pivot table. So if I want to say, show me my sales amount, let's see the cost associated with those sales, and that'll leave us with maybe the profit and the profit percent. I've checked 4 boxes, and it's giving me these numbers automatically. I can come down here and put some context around them though. So let's say, let's go ahead and see what items we're selling, and let's roll that up by item category. So you can see there's our item categories over here, across these different dimensions. And then if I come through here and say, let's look at this over time. So by checking about 6 different boxes, I built a full functional sales report with year-over-year sales, consolidated totals at the end. And I mean, all I had to do was check those boxes. So you can expand out, as I mentioned, down to more granular level if you want to see the individual items instead of by item category. But really all getting to kind of the dashboard report field that you've seen so far is let's click on here. Maybe we, and I guess I'll show real quick here. This is very flexible in a pivot table. So if you want your dates descending instead, you want to go that way, you can do that. If you want to look at items by year, I can just drag and drop it that way. Like I said, I can expand out any of this information where there's a plus sign. So if I just want to look at, 2017 in January, well, there's my information. But I'm just going to go ahead and set this back up in the columns. So maybe I click on here, come to my Insert tab here, and let's bring in some slicers, which are just, again, those visual filters. So let's do one for maybe, we'll do one for company. Maybe we do one for, posting date by year, maybe one by salesperson so we can see who's selling what, and click OK. So I'll bring in these slicers, set them where I want them, and again, we're getting tight on time, so I'm just going to throw them down here. Let's go ahead and show you right now, this is all tied together, so I can look at 2017. It's just going to filter on 2017. I like to take off my grid lines. Maybe we click on here and insert a visual, some sort of maybe a column chart again, or whatever we want to put in here. Can blow that up a little bit if we want to do that. But I mean, that's Jet Enterprise. I mean, that's as difficult as it gets with Enterprise. If you want to get to more of the dashboard feel, you could create a few more sheets and just make some more reports and then consolidate all the visuals. So I could call this, my sales by item category. Maybe I do sales by salesperson, sales by region, whatever it is. Call this my dashboard page, copy those visuals over, add some slicers around the outside and some formatting. But I mean, that's as difficult as Enterprise gets. The last thing I'll just show you real quick, Jet Mobile. So it's the other front end for Enterprise. You can actually create a new feel of dashboards and take them on the go. I'm in the web browser here. I don't even need Jet installed. I can click on this sales dashboard. It's going to make me log in one more time. So I'll just pop that in. We'll call this demo. Put our password in. So in this sample environment, you'll see it'll take me in. It's a different design interface. You don't design these in Excel, but again, that's something Alex would be happy to show you guys if you want more information on the mobile piece. So it's just an add-on for, again, Enterprise. Once I log in here, it'll pull up my report library with a bunch of different dashboards and reports that you have access to. And those should pull up here. It might not like that I already opened this up here and then it timed out. Let me try just opening a new tab here. Let's go ahead and paste this down. How is it doing that? Control V. All right, let's pull this up. And that should pop us in here. Okay, perfect. And then if I click on like this sales dashboard, for example, you can see I can actually come in here in the web. I can read from the cubes. I can slice and dice. So just show me North America just for Annette Hill. I can blow up any of these visuals. I'll just take these off real quick. So I can actually click on here and say, let's just look at sales by salesperson and blow that up. I can grab this and drag it over and I can see, my top 10 items by profit. So a lot of really cool stuff going on. We're right at the end of time. That's about as deep as I can get in here just because of the time we have left. So with that, I guess I'll pass it back over to you, Mike. But before I do, really quick here, actually, let me just show you. If you do have questions about anything on our end, you can get a hold of Alex L at jetreports.com. So that's Alex's email if you have questions. Otherwise, obviously, the folks at Solution Systems, reach out to them. But yeah, Mike, I'll pass that back over to you.
Alrighty. Thank you, Anthony. Also, thanks for taking the time to present the entire suite of Jet reports to us.
My pleasure.
Change the screen here. All right. So if any of our viewers have any questions, you can contact me by using the contact information that you should see on your screen right now. My number is 847-590-3000, extension 295. Or you can email me at michaeli@solsys.com. I guess that about does it for us. But, just want to thank you all for attending, and I hope that we're able to provide some sort of valuable information. And once again, I want to thank Anthony for taking the time out to present the webinar to us. And everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.